You are listening to the Heartland Author Podcast. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For today's episode, I interviewed Dr. David Pearce. Dr. Pearce has many years of experience as a dentist and founded Ultimate Success in Dentistry, a company that provides coaching services to dentists. Dr. Pearce has written 2 books with a third in progress. I'm here with Dr. David Pearce, who is a dentist, the founder of Ultimate Success in Dentistry, and an author. David, welcome to the Heartland Author Podcast.
Hey, Aaron. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure, honor to be here.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yes. So the elevator speech would be trained as a general dentist, 38 years of clinical experience, and I've always been a student of most anything I do. So my career went from general dentist to surgical restoration of peoples who have very significant disabilities in that they feel they can't smile, they feel they can't eat, so they avoid social contact, or they have limitations or restrictions on living their life the way they want to. And so my team and I, those were our challenges every day, were to help those kind of folks, and extremely rewarding for sure, because many of those people at the end of that, I should say all those people really at the end of that, were able to live a different life than they had up until that point. So they either got back the life they had before all that started breaking down, or were had a smile and ability to eat that they never had and always wished they did. So that I enjoyed that very much, and at the same point in time I wanted to do other things in my life. So in 2022 I stepped away from clinical dentistry so that I could pursue another passion, which is to help other dentists figure out the business, the non-clinical side of dentistry. So the business, the sales, the marketing, the team engagement, the leadership of themselves and their team. So to allow them or help them to get way more acceptance of that same kind of dentistry, and essentially use the skills that they had, because I know dentists have just phenomenal skills, but they hardly come anywhere near their potential because they just haven't figured out the business side of it, and so they end up doing things like a general dentist would do, but they have the skill set to do so much more and help so many more people. So that's been my passion now for sure, Aaron, and it's been a really good ride.
Now, you've written 2 books, is that correct?
Correct, yeah. Working on a third one now.
Okay, now without spoiling too much of them, what are each of them about?
The first book is it's called Peak Success, an Entrepreneurial Guide to Prosperity, and it's directed towards dentists in its examples, but my feeling, Aaron, I imagine you might agree, is that pretty much any business, especially small businesses, they're not that much different from one from the other when it comes to the business side. The product and services might be different, but the rest of it's all pretty much the same. And so, I think that my experience is that many small business owners, entrepreneurs, depending on how they get into being an entrepreneur, don't really have the knowledge of how to run that business. So it's either intuitive or it's not. They either have coaches and seek out coaches, or they don't. And I find that the majority, it's not intuitive and they don't seek anybody out. So the book is really just kind of a nuts and bolts of so here's what it takes to take your business from no matter where it is really, and push it to as high a level as you want to, and all the basics of that at a theoretical standpoint, if it's like just even how you think about the restricting thoughts that you have about what you and your business can do. And then from there, just really very much nuts and bolts. And then the second one, what I found with a lot of, so for me, my journey was, I've been told it was successful in 2 ways, which make me sort of stand out and make the folks that coach me say, you really have a message that you really need to write books and coach and so forth. The first was, how do you make your business profitable? How do you make it so it creates a revenue flow? But then the second, how do you create a lifestyle around that so you have financial security and financial freedom So if you get called away from dentistry at an early age due to a disability or something, you're still set for life. And if you have a long career, even more so, you're just set for life financially. What does that second piece look like? Because I meet many dentists who've made, or many dentists, people, business people who have made a lot of money. And then at the end of the day, they get towards, okay, now I can't create an income flow. And they, so the management of that thought process and the investments and that so forth, or the revenue they created, has not created any sort of a windfall that they can rely on. And so their lifestyle plummets, and they have some regrets and so forth for the last 2-3 decades of their life.
Now, as a point of clarification, you have 2 books that are on the market now, and a third will be published at a later date. Is that correct?
Not quite that far. One will be published. The first one should be published within a month. It's at the publishers now.
Okay.
Yeah. The second one, I that process of going through publication. Like the first book will be, you can get it at Amazon and Nobles and so Walmart and all that kind of stuff. It'll be available in all those places. It's that being my first book, I looked at and said, is that it's a great. I'm proud of the book for sure. And subsequent books, I've looked at those and said, is it that wide an audience, worldwide audience that I'm trying to address, and in that scope, or would it be more of a great resource that I could share with a select, 1,000, 2,000 people over the next 20 years, where I really feel like it's going to help them, but it's not a resource that people are going to be seeking out. So the third one one's going to be much more so on leadership and sales. So that's more of a universal book. Everybody could use that, and one that I feel really comfortable writing about and chatting about and promoting from an author standpoint. The middle one might be one that I hold back as like an ebook. If somebody said, well, so like, how did you create the personal wealth that you have now? I'd be like, well, that's easy. We'll read this, and then when we get done reading that, we can chat.
Now, are your books going to be self-published or traditionally published?
Traditionally published.
Okay. Now, you have a literary agent, right?
It's Forbes Books is the name of the company that I've worked with.
Okay, so that's the name of the agency. Okay. Now, what was the hardest part of transitioning from being a practicing dentist to writing books?
Quite honestly, that's a really great question, actually, and I never really thought about it. It was much easier. Probably let's see, I'll back up. See if I can answer your question more directly. I never intended to write a book. I always thought I might write a book, but never really had this I'm going to write a book. But when I went off to leave clinical, where people sought me and my team out for our skills because we had been doing it and doing marketing and such like that. So the flow of leads and interested parties was very high. When I went from that to being a work by myself dental coach, it's a totally different space, and so my authority in that space was strong amongst the relatively small community who knew me, where I've been working with business-wise and other things. But in the broader community of business and dentistry, I was unknown. So the folks that were around me said, you have so much knowledge that you've acquired over the years and expertise that one of the things you should do is to write a book on it. One, just to lay it out, but two, writing a book helps other people see you more as somebody who's an authority as opposed to somebody who just says, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. And so that sort of pushed it to a much sooner time frame. So once I looked at that, I said, okay, I need to do that. It actually happened, like the publisher said, we'd like you to, typically they said, we do ghostwriting and it takes, 3 to 6 months to do the whole thing. And I said, well, the good news is I'm not doing clinical dentistry anymore, so I have freedom of time. That's on my side. I'm not at the office all day long. And I don't and I don't think I want to use a ghostwriter. I think I can write it myself. And I think I can do it much faster than that. And they said, so they said, well, okay, let's give it a month and a half. And in 7 days, I had turned out 240, 50 pages of manuscript and submitted it to them. And they said, this is what we're looking for. This is good. So I guess I had an ability to write maybe that I didn't never really looked at before. And when I was forced, my word, like forced progress to like you need to create authority by writing a book, then it actually happened much easier than I thought.
Now, what services does your company Ultimate Success in Dentistry provide?
Well, it's a one-on-one coaching. I like the word coaching because to me, I think that is encompassing of all the specialty folks that we seek out to make us a better version of ourselves or make our business a better version of itself. And it's one-on-one, to say in a general sense, just one-on-one coaching to say, where are you now? Let's get crystal clear on where you as an individual and an entrepreneur are now. Where do you want to go? What are your goals? Because my goal is to help you get where you want to get. And then set up a blueprint or roadmap of how to do that. And then on a weekly basis, we communicate Zoom or phone or whatever. I visit their offices to get progress reports and kind of observe things through my eyes, my lens. We meet together at our residence, usually our residence in Florida is where we meet for at least a day at the inception of our relationship to really just kind of get the dentist out of their space and start thinking in bigger pictures and bigger terms and get clarity on what they want. And then my journey so far is that I'm thinking about like 100% of my clients I've used so far after it's a 9 to 12 month initial agreement contract, if you will. And 100% of them have said, yeah, I'd like to pay you the same fee again for a second year because I've gotten so much value and progress out of this first year. So that's been gratifying as well.
Now, you are a member of a mastermind group with over a dozen of your fellow dentists. And what does this mastermind group do for you and your fellow dentists?
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, it's nice. I mean, I'd say dentists that are similar to me in a sense, like I want to be the best that I can possibly be. I know my business can be better, and I don't know how, but I want input from other folks that either are on that journey, they're ahead of me on that journey, they're a little bit behind me on that journey, whatever that might be. So there's now it's probably a group of maybe 30, 35. We meet in different groups. All 35 don't meet at once typically, but we'll meet quarterly, and it's really all on the business side of dentistry. All the stuff that really that my coaching part is focusing on. We do have clinical conversations, sidebar clinical conversations, but everybody. My experience has been that most dentists that are where they are and they want to get better. That, matter of fact, I was just at a surgical course last weekend, and I was talking to one of the highly successful dentists that was there, and she was saying, that how it's so easy in today's world to make for a dentist to say, I want to be a clinical master, because there's so many great courses you can take, and all you got to do is change yourself. It's like go in there and learn how to do it. Just have the brainwidth to learn it and go practice it. Get really good at it in your office. But different to go to your business and say, okay, now I got to get my team to act like leaders and become engaged, and then come up with all the other systems and put all those things in and to put that hat on. That's a very different part of the process of success, and that's the part that we focus on in these masterminds. That's where the questions come from, because everybody has almost the same. I mean, they sound different, but a lot of the problems are very much the same, and the root source or the core of the problem is almost always the same.
Now, my final question is, how do you create a learning culture in your business? That was a question that appeared on some of the on your Podmatch page.
Sure. Well, I think it starts with hiring. Aaron, that certainly that if as I learned in my business, if I heard myself complaining about anybody on my team, that some of my coaches said, "Well, who hired them, David?" Like, "Oh yeah, I did." "And who set up the systems for them to learn there, David?" "I did." "And who's holding them accountable to the stuff you say you want to do?" "Oh yeah, I know." I mean, they are, but ultimately it's me. And so, so the idea, I've always been a learner type person. The idea of being a lifelong learner to me is very strong in me, and that's kind of just who I am. And so part of that was like when people are hired, say like, so this is like who we are. Like I would expect that when your life causes you to leave this office and go someplace else in your journey and in your working world journey, that you'll look back on and say, I'm a better version of myself because I worked in that office. Whatever that means to them, that they would say. And that was like probably the most gratifying thing of my entire career, was that feedback from team members who said, like, I can have conversations with people now I never could have had before. I know things about myself now I never would have found out if I hadn't read these books and go through this process. And it wasn't David Pearce magic stuff. There's nothing special about me. It was more just setting up an environment that way. So, for instance, we would have a meeting 12 times a year, approximately once a month, and that would be a 4-hour meeting. And the whole purpose of that was we were going to learn. And so, oftentimes we were reading books together, and then we were studying those, so to speak. What'd you get out of it? What'd you get out of it? And then every one of those, we'd start off and say, over the last 6 months, we've had one of these a month. What were the commitments you've made? We'd start off every one of those meetings, but we called everybody would have to announce their will, and it was spelled WIL, which is what I learned. So they say, so in the last 30 days, this is what I've learned. And they would start off saying, in the last 6 months, these are the things that I learned 6 months ago, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and this is what I've done to put those into effect. So learning isn't learning unless you actually change behavior, change activity. So that was probably the biggest thing we did, because then initially some folks were like, "Oh, you really got to read a book or listen to a book, and then you got to study the book." And even though they knew when they're hired that we were going to do it, they'd never been in a situation where that was actually mandated and embraced. But after they started doing it, like, this is really good. I like this book. I didn't even think I'd like it, but this part is good, or whatever it might be. And so they got enthusiasm for that learning process. So that was, I think, that was the main thing. And then, just on our regular weekly meetings, we would just look at things and say, so what happened yesterday that was hard? Well, Mrs. Jones said this, their teammate said that. Okay, so how can we have better conversations with our teammates? And to me, that's all about like learning. How do I have better communications? How do I have better relationships? How do I become a better version of myself as a person and as a professional?
Okay, Dr. Pearce, you were a wonderful guest for this podcast, and I thank you for appearing on the Heartland Author Podcast.
Aaron, thank you. I really appreciate the invitation, and keep doing the great work that you're doing. You're doing a great service to your audience, and that's why they tune in and listen. Kudos to you, my friend.
Dr. Pearce was an interesting and wonderful guest for this podcast. While I have time, I will acknowledge that if X, which used to be known as Twitter, becomes a platform where regular non-premium users must pay a regular fee to use the platform at all, I will have to delete my X/Twitter accounts. In any case, I will use my author website at campaaronapollo.witsite.com/author AAC, as well as my many other social media platforms, including Threads, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, Mastodon, among others, to promote my work. I also have Ko-Fi and Buy Me a Coffee pages where you could donate money to me if you want to. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to write your imagination. Bye for now. You can learn more about me and my book writing projects at campaaronapollo.witsite.com/author AAC. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at author AAC and on Instagram at AAC Scribe. Copyright 2023, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.